Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the Liverpool Echoes Blood Red podcast. I'm your host for today, Patrick Smith, and we'll be reacting to Liverpool's brilliant win in the Merseyside Derby, a 2-0 win over Everton, thanks to Mohamed Salah's goal and Cody Gakpo's first goal for Liverpool. A great night for the Reds. Welcome along, everyone. Well, I'm in esteemed company again once today with our brilliant team from the Echo Towers. Up first, we have Liverpool FC correspondent Paul Gorst. How's things, Gorsty?
Yeah, all good, mate. All good. Feels good to be talking about the Liverpool win.
Yeah, I think Randy really does.
Do that, hasn't it? So, yeah, looking forward to getting stuck into it.
Yeah, absolutely nice to not be ranting on a pod for once, shall we say. We've also got David Lynch alongside us, Lynchy. We can be positive for once, can't we?
Yeah, no, it will be nice to sort of share some positives and sort of have some hope for the future for once. That'll be a nice change.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the first time on a Blood Red pod in 2023, Rich, can we see you crack a smile when talking about Liverpool?
I'm in a chipper mood, Pat. Took plenty of feedback from my miserable persona on the last one, and I'm here full of positivity.
Lovely stuff. It's what we love to hear. Finally, the Reds are back to winning ways. And we'll get into the Merseyside Derby reaction a little bit later on the show. But Gorsty, will come to you first. We're going to start with the UEFA independent investigation into the Champions League final. Obviously, that was described as chaos. I mean, there's so many words you can use to describe the scenes outside the Stade de France and Paris ahead of the Champions League final between Liverpool and Real Madrid. For those who are slightly unaware of what happened and what the circumstances are, could you just explain what the independent review was into and what it found?
Yeah, it's something that got leaked around about tea time yesterday, which was very convenient given that Liverpool's collective attention would have been focusing on the Merseyside Derby. Liverpool, understandably, very unhappy at the leak and the timing of that, and said that they weren't going to speculate or comment on it until it was, an official report and the findings were there in front of them. But essentially, Liverpool have come out today and they've kind of urged, UEFA to act on the recommendations that have been outlined in the report. That's quite damning, really, and sort of laid the chaos and the all the kind of dangerous uncertainty that surrounded the build up to the Champions League final at the start of France at the end of May, essentially at the door of UEFA and their kind of unorganised shambles of a showpiece. Though, given that the Champions League final was held at the start of France in a major European city in Paris, okay, it might not necessarily be Paris per se. Saint-Denis, it's a borough in Paris, isn't it, on the outskirts? But that country and that stadium should have been capable of organising a football game without a hitch even at short notice. And to anyone who was there on the day, it was scary, wasn't it? And I was quite fortunate. Me and Ian Doyle, we got there early enough that we avoided any of the ensuing chaos. But it was just a horrendous experience for so many and dangerous. And it's kind of come out now, hasn't it, that Liverpool fans have been exonerated, and had they not behaved as impeccably as they did on the night, then we could have been looking at, personal tragedies. And thankfully that wasn't the case, but certainly not something that should ever be repeated again. Certainly, high-level sporting event like that. And it's something that UEFA have been urged to basically act on. But I think it's got about more than just we can learn from mistakes and we can make sure that it goes off without a hitch next time. I think the failings are that bad that I think some people have got to be culpable, and it's got to result in resignations and sackings for me, because it's just so horrendous, really. As I say, had it not been for the behaviour of the Liverpool fans as a collective, we could have been talking about something a lot more serious than what has actually transpired. Behaviour of the federal authorities was in particular disgusting, with indiscriminate tear gassings of men, women and children. It was just, I spoke to loads of people who were there on the night, and it was kind of described to me as a bit of a war zone, which something that should never be happening. We only go to watch a football match, and it's the biggest fixture in European football, and this is the main takeaway from it all. So there's got to be, obviously, lessons to be learned, but also I do think that it's got to result in some sort of, punitive action, whether that's from UEFA or the authorities themselves. But yeah, Liverpool very scathing anyway in their statement this morning, and fair play to them because they're fully within the rights to be.
Yeah, I mean, UEFA welcomed the report, as they say. I mean, Lynch, what's your thoughts on this? Because, it is amazing the Liverpool fans have been praised for saving lives. And this report, made what we already sort of knew, proven in an external report. I mean, it could have been a really, really tragic day, couldn't it? And, we can't let this one just be swept under the rug. I know that UEFA sort of leaked the report just before the Merseyside Derby, and maybe that's a hint that they're trying to maybe hide it. Do you think that's the case, or do you think that's a bit of a coincidence?
It doesn't look good, does it? It's not just that the leak came out at the time it did just before around kickoff, but also then that they ultimately published a report a few hours later, just very close to match kicking off, and yeah, a clear attempt really to sort of very bad news. And I think that sort of leaves a bitter taste in the mouth. But I do think out of this horrendous situation that's happened, there is actually a lot of praise that deserves to get shared out. I think for starters, you read the UEFA report, and the report itself acknowledges at the start that some of the people involved in the panel have quite close ties to UEFA, and it sets out that they were determined to make sure that they went through a thorough review, and there was no sort of accusations of two interests or trying to protect UEFA in any way. And I think you look at the results of the report, and it's very clear they've done an extremely thorough job and done a very good job. I also think we probably wouldn't have got to this point without some of the reporting that was done on the ground on the day. A lot of reporters, you'd say, okay, well, it's their job to tell the truth, but we Liverpool fans have previous experience of that not being the case, and people not fighting the corner. But you look at what Sky were doing on the night and in the subsequent days, and reporters from several nationals, obviously the Echo as well. I think the journalism that was done around it was fantastic and allowed to create those testimonies that were crucial to the report. And obviously, yeah, huge praise to the fans for not only protecting each other and looking after each other and avoiding disaster, but also making sure that they provided evidence and helped the club in terms of putting their package together that they provided to report. And actually praise the club as well, because they've been very firm on this. They didn't just take that line from UEFA that it was fan trouble and all that nonsense that was spouted in the initial aftermath. I think they've been very, very firm on this, and we've got to a position where Liverpool fans have now been rightfully fully exonerated. I think it's great to see that, really, because it's Liverpool fans have experienced in the past that's not always the case in terms of these attempted cover-ups and things like that. So actually good that there's been a positive result out of that. But I do agree with Gorst. I think this point deserves to be made again, really, is that there should be resignations now. It's not just a case of taking on the recommendations from Liverpool. There has to be resignations and some serious culpability here, because you can't just say, oh, well, we got lucky, Liverpool fans to let us off the hook, there were no deaths, therefore no one should pay the price for this. It was just good fortune and the good work of Liverpool supporters and some Real Madrid supporters as well. You would say, oh, they were less caught up in it, but also, there were no deaths on the night. And if you get lucky in that way, that for me doesn't mean you should be free of consequences. I think there should be serious ramifications from this going forward, and hopefully there is, because the report is utterly damning. As we knew it should be, but it's a relief that it is, really, and that the truth is now out there, and UEFA can't argue with it. There has to be action taken.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be the responsibility of the fans at a Champions League final to make sure they're saving lives. It's absolutely negligent. And I think, not to take your question, Rich, but there shouldn't just be resignations from UEFA on this. There should be resignations across, French public services as well for the, atrocious way it was handled. I mean, Rich, just to get your views on this, to round us off on the point, what would you like to see happen? Because obviously there's a Champions League final again this season, as there will be every year, obviously. But Liverpool may or may not be there. Would you want to go to it now? Would you be assured of the safety of it, given how dreadful it was in Paris? It kind of puts fans off wanting to go to these occasions, doesn't it?
Well, to put it into context, my son begged me to take him to Paris, and he's 11 years old, and as it were, I didn't go and missed out on the ballot. And it's the first time I can honestly say I was glad that I actually was unable to attend the football match. One of the things that kind of resonates with me of all that sort of footage that we have the benefit of seeing these days through social media, you don't have to wait a long time for reports or, on the ground accounts to surface to you because of the technology that we have the benefit of now. One of the things I distinctly remember was a young lad and his dad getting through the turnstile. I think he'd been tear gassed or certainly caught up in the melee. And the lad turns around to his son and said, "I'm never going the game again." And that broke my heart, to be honest. Broke my heart to see something like that. And that can't happen, can you? That poor boy's memory of going on the trip of a lifetime with his dad it's disgraceful. It's an absolute disgrace. And I feel sad for it. I do feel emotional thinking about it. It just can't happen. And the heads need to roll for it. And I'm not saying who, but they need, this report has been put together in not too unreasonable a time, given what we've experienced in the past when it comes to stadium issues. And now someone has to pay the price for that and ensure that it never happens again. And in the aftermath of Paris, I don't think it was beyond Liverpool, or certainly the supporters, realism to not want to participate in that sort of situation in a final like that, even though it's such a high profile thing and the club's steeped in history. Why should anyone be subjected to that sort of treatment when you, in what is effectively an entertainment activity? And some of the excuses that were offered up about the fear of English fans, it's archaic nonsense, and just reeked of panic and desperation. So I was fortunate enough to be in Istanbul 18 years ago, and I would dearly love a return there this year, even if it looks a bit of a tall order the way the team's playing at the moment. But that there needs to be clear, an apology obviously, and clear evidence that UEFA and the governing bodies that are involved in putting on finals as big as this have learned the lessons from this and can show how they're going to put that into action for future finals.
I'd just come in on that, sorry. I'd like to see some sort of reckoning as well in terms of how English fans are policed generally across Europe, because I think that wasn't the first time last season that Liverpool supporters had issues through no fault of their own whatsoever.
Benfica springs to mind, Lynch, doesn't it? Yeah,
exactly. Heavy-handed policing, and it's a regular theme really. And I just think as a starting point, it seems to be okay. An English club's coming over. Let's beat them up. Let's make life difficult for them. They're gonna cause us problems, even if that's absolute nonsense. Liverpool fans are very well behaved with travelling across Europe, which is something they do regularly in huge numbers as well. And I want to see something happen in terms of that, in terms of the way they're treated, and UEFA have got to take some. Nothing was done really in the aftermath of the Benfica one, and that all feeds in then to building up to the final and what happened there, in terms of if there are no consequences for your local police acting in that way when you are inviting guests to your stadium for UEFA sanctioned competition, then it will just continue. And I think this report has got to not just change things around. Okay, Stade de France can't host events for this amount going forward. Someone's head will roll in the French authorities in some way. It's got to be, UEFA have got to have a look at how football fans are treated when they're going to their competitions, because at the moment it's just not good enough. And you haven't, like the young child that Richard mentioned there, in terms of being sort of scared off from going to matches again, and it's depressing, and it just shouldn't be happening in this day and age. You really needs to be rethink about how this is done.
Yeah, let's really hope we see some action from this, because it needs to happen. And if we're in Liverpool, we know they won't let up on it, and they won't take no for an answer on that one. Because the police at the moment, they're not there to protect fans, they're there to incite anger, fear. It just doesn't make you want to go to these occasions, which is really sad. But we'll leave that one there for now, and plenty more on that across the Liverpool Echo website and social channels. Everyone, make sure you check out the articles for the latest news on that. But let's move on then to the Merseyside Derby last night. Liverpool 2-0 win, of course. Gorst, you were there at Anfield. Finally, a Liverpool win to talk about. Nice to be back at Anfield as well, I trust, after your voyages on the road, shall we say, so far in 2023.
Yeah, it was just nice to see Liverpool just put in a bit of a performance that resembled something that we've become used to, hasn't it? I don't think it was a sparkling performance by any stretch, but they just looked like they had a bit of energy about them, a bit of a willingness to get about the pitch. You have to bit between the teeth at certain points, and it was a bit of a contrast from what I was expecting, to be honest, because I thought, having seen Everton beat Arsenal the week before and Sean Dyche's first match as manager, and obviously I was at Wolves last week when Liverpool were totally abject, I was kind of the belief that there had even be said that Everton were approaching this one as favourites, which is incredible, really, when you think of the record they've got at Anfield. No win in front of supporters since September 1999, and only one win, during that period in the COVID season when there was, no supporters there. And what was it, 2 years ago now? So that was a bit of a, kind of how passive Everton were. It was a bit of a surprise. I thought they would have been a lot more up for it than they were. Obviously, been massively hamstrung by the fact that they can get a striker in the January transfer window. So they've got Ellis Sims, who's being asked to lead the line in the Merseyside Derby, which is massively unfair on him. But that played into the hands of Joe Gomez and Joel Matip, who were probably delighted when they looked at the team sheet and they saw a lad who never played against, and probably don't know a whole lot about. Just enabled them to ease into the game. And I thought, slowly but surely, Liverpool found their feet. I think Liverpool have conceded 5 times inside the first 5 minutes this season, and they've gone behind in 12 of the 20 games prior to last night. So while you normally expect a lot of blood and thunder in the early going of a Merseyside derby, I was actually really pleased when it was a bit of a slow start and a bit of a quiet one and nothing was happening really, because I thought that probably plays into Liverpool's hands a bit more. If they can just get a little bit of a foothold in the game, they'll eventually show the quality and prove too much for Everton, and that was how it went down. But Cetic was superb. Cody Gakpo in the second half, thought he was a player transformed. Thought Darwin Núñez was excellent. Mo Salah was showing a little bit more of his old self, and I thought Henderson was really good as well. He's been out of the team because of poor form, deservedly, him and Fabinho. But I thought putting them back in yesterday worked, and I think everyone can hold their heads up high this morning, because we haven't been able to say that too often about Liverpool this season. But that was a potentially tricky one, and they've navigated it quite well, and it's just given them something to clutch onto now for the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so many impressive individual displays that we can get into in a bit. I mean, Lynch, in a point, Gorst mix, there's the one that I was really delighted with as well, because I was apprehensive going into this one. Everton as well, not particularly because they had a good result against Arsenal, but they're a good side for the set pieces. They're physical, they can cause problems in that sense. And Liverpool, that's probably been the worst part of their game this season, hasn't it? Those first 10 minutes, the midfield battles, defending set pieces. Now, those collective displays, especially from the defence, to be fair to them, much more like it, Lynchy, wasn't it, in that sense?
Yeah, 100%. I Ghosty touched on it there about, sort of felt like Everton coming into his favourites. I think I was telling anyone who'd listen in the build-up that, fancied Everton to win the game, and then you sort of forget, don't you, really? We probably got a bit carried away, I certainly did, with the idea that of how good Everton might be under Sean Dyche, because let's not forget, I think he's a really good manager. I think he will bring them to safety, but his record at Anfield is very poor. The Burnley did get that one win, but it was with no supporters in, obviously, at a time when Liverpool were handing out Anfield wins for fun. And generally, Jurgen Klopp's had his number completely. And I thought impressive in that win over Arsenal, but it's a different challenge, isn't it, to come to Anfield and try and win. So we probably got a bit carried away, and I thought in the end, Liverpool just sort of offered a reminder, really, that they're a class above Everton at the moment, and that, Everton have got a lot of work to do to sort of get themselves out of the trouble they're in. But in terms of the defence, that was the cornerstone of it, really. What I most liked about it, I think, yesterday was seeing, obviously, it was Ellis Sims up front for Everton, inexperienced, and they probably used him in a way that he doesn't, he's a big lad, but I know a Sunderland fan who said he's more of a fox in the box, really, than someone who's physical and likes to sort of hold the ball up. So Everton used him in a way he wasn't comfortable with, but I still loved watching Joe Gomez dominate him. I think that's something you could accuse Gomez of maybe not doing sometimes in games. He's a bit passive at times, but he quite clearly wanted to just be on the front foot all the time. That I want to see a little bit more of that, really, from him between now and the end of the season. If he keeps his place, obviously Van Dijk being back in, it's a big decision to make, but I think that really just set the tone, really, because Everton were being forced by the press to go long, and Liverpool were just sweeping up absolutely everything. So they were just on the front foot constantly. It was, at Everton, you knew that a goal was coming then because Everton couldn't get out and Liverpool were just around their box constantly. So, just huge praise to them for that, really. And I thought, it was one of the more satisfying elements of the performance, really, was that the defence would look so firm after being, so porous in recent weeks. They looked like they were really up for it and wanted that physical battle. And just want to see a little bit more of that going forward, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope it's not just a case of Everton not being a great side and Liverpool having a decent performance. Really hope we can see that similar defensive display at Newcastle on the weekend. But Rich, let's talk about Stefan Babic. He's the man of the match last night, clearly. The boy of the match because he's so young, I suppose you could say. What a display from him, Rich, wasn't it? He's a centre-half. He's played in the 6 and he was in that new advanced number 8 role last night. Do you think he's found his feet there and that's going to be his place in the Liverpool side?
I think he certainly is to stay in the Liverpool side this season. Absolutely. Let's be honest, not too many people have impressed us in midfield recently, but he can be the exception to the rule, and he's doing it under pretty difficult circumstances, isn't it? It's not like he's coming to a winning team where it's like, let's blood this 18-year-old with all these high-performing professionals around him. It's not been like that, has it? He's come in and under difficult circumstances and kind of shown that he actually belongs to be there, even with his tender years. And let's not forget, Liverpool have got some other young players, of a similar age to them. But at the moment, you'd have to say that he's impressed more than probably any of the others, and really shown a maturity beyond his years, hasn't he? The fact that he's still in that side, it brought Fabinho back in, an established professional with bags of experience and a proven track record, and he's still kept him in the side when he could have brought in a number of other midfielders instead if he wanted to. He chose not to. He wanted to repay his faith, and he's delivered on it. And he looks athletic. He loves to get stuck in. As you say, he's played that slightly more advanced role last night. Looked like he flourished in that as well. And you it's exciting to watch him actually, because you wonder what's going to come next from him. Has he got any more elements to his game that we're yet to see, purely because he's played that sort of deep lying role so far, and I suppose he's an interesting player to learn, what attributes that he's got that you might not see if you're not watching the academy football week in, week out. So I think it's fantastic. He's definitely the sort of the bright spark of this season so far. Probably a little surprising for me as well, if I'm being honest. I know he was doing okay in the youth team, but I didn't realise just how advanced he was getting. And I'm excited to see what comes next with him. But he's going to be in that team now until the end of the season, I would imagine, barring something unfortunate.
Yeah, I was a big fan. That energy and pressing that we saw from him is obviously something we didn't get to see in the number 6 role, because we wouldn't have had those chances to burst forward and press, as the classic Jurgen Klopp sides do. So really, really impressive. I think he also helped bring the best out of Fabinho in the 6 by, just running around so much, basically the energy he provided.
Just on that point, Pat, with having, if you think of the sort of typical makeup of a trio in midfield, just having those two more defensively minded players in there, it seemed to benefit Liverpool greatly. And let's be honest, when you've been leaking goals for fun and whatnot, you need to do something that makes it a bit more robust. Liverpool probably don't need something too luxurious in that midfield at the moment. It just needs to function and work hard and win the ball, and then let's get the ball forward to those rich array of attacking players, two of which returned last night, and maybe that may be the way to go forward with those two in there doing that job.
It does suggest as well that Fabinho is just, for all his troubles this season, has maybe just needed a little bit more energy around him. Maybe the gaps were just too big around him, and he was being asked to do too much. And that it's encouraging. He's the one that you particularly hope is not just falling off a cliff completely, because he's still relatively young, and you'd like to think there's a few more good years in him yet. And so hopefully just having that energy around him again is the way to get him back to his best, because Liverpool still need him, don't they? He's still got a long contract left. I think they need a lot more out of him, and hopefully that's the start of a trend in the right direction.
Yeah, and let's not forget as well, Amadou Onana is some midfield battle, so he did very, very well in that one for just 18 years of age. It's absolutely crazy. But Gorsty, let's move on into the attack. Cody Gakpo down the middle again, down the middle for the whole night. It looks like that's where he's going to be playing for Liverpool. How do you think he played? And obviously, delighted to get his first Liverpool goal, wasn't he?
Yeah, I thought second half in particular, he was excellent. Probably definitely his best half of football as a Liverpool player. First half, wasn't too many chances. Was there? He probably had the biggest one where he maybe should have done better. But me and Lynch were talking after the game actually in the mix zone, and we were saying it does seem like that's where they see Cody Gakpo now long term down the middle. We know he played off the left of PSV and he played there for the Netherlands, but his kind of tight, close control, his ability to kind of burst past the defender over 5 or 10 yards, and his just the way he kind of is looking to knit things together. We're seeing a Roberto Firmino replacement now, I think, and I think ultimately that will be where he plays for Liverpool down the middle. I don't think he's going to be playing every week. I think it'll be a horses for courses approach once everyone's fit and firing. I think maybe Luis Diaz is a starter off the left, and we know Mohamed Salah is down the right. But in terms of who's going to be operating through the middle, we'll see what happens with Firmino. He says he wants to stay, and Klopp says he wants to stay. If they can work out the contract situation, and if he stays, that's another positive aspect. But then you've got Diogo Jota, Darwin Núñez, and then Gakpo and Firmino, who were kind of almost a little bit similar. But other than those two, it's a broad sliding scale of strikers that Jurgen Klopp's got to work with there. Looking forward to seeing Jota get back up to speed. I think his season's been ruined, hasn't it, by the hamstring injury he got in July, and then obviously the calf injury in October. He hasn't scored since April. The 2-2 draw at Manchester City. I think it might be next season where we see the best of him. That's something I asked Klopp a couple of weeks back, and he was dismissive of that. He said, because of Jota's intelligence, that he thinks he'll be able to kind of hit the ground running and won't look like he's missed a beat. But got reservations over that. I think, as I say, it might be next season where we see the best of Jota. So until then, I suppose it's up to Gakpo to continue in the vein of form he showed, particularly second half yesterday, and he'll be absolutely delighted to get that tap in at the end. I think Klopp said after the game, it's exactly what he will have been dreaming of since he joined the club, and Darwin Núñez could do with something like that now as well. Just a little easy tap in, just a notch, and then you see the kind of confidence that immediately brings. And I don't think Núñez is lacking for confidence, to be honest. He could just do with a little bit of an easy one, couldn't he, just to knock in and then go on a bit of a run. But yeah, certainly Gakpo's best performance in a Liverpool share for me yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely for Gakpo. I think, there are times where he wasn't necessarily trying to make a goal for himself, but that'll just take a huge weight off his shoulders. And it was nice seeing him in that role, because it was sort of a false 9, floating number 10 role at times, because I feel like Liverpool's shape did change to a diamond in attack on occasion, which is nice for him to have that versatility. I mean, Lynchy, what's your take on the attacking situation? Obviously, Salah as well. Really important that he got a goal, because he's been a bit of a duck at the moment, hasn't he? And then you've got Jota coming back in, Roberto Firmino. He's got 9 goals, 4 assists, I think, so far this season. Very important goals for Liverpool. The attack could slowly but surely be getting back to its full strength, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it's massive just because Liverpool aren't probably going to play perfectly between now and the end of the season. There's still some issues in the team that are not going to quite work themselves out, and you think you can get through situations like that by just scoring goals. And Klopp's now got a bit of a selection headache in terms of what his first choice attack looks like between now and the end of the season, and that's a good thing, because whatever he picks and whatever sort of selection he comes up with, he's going to have options off the bench to win it late in games. And just to bring those to Firmino and Jota on yesterday, just such a huge boost late in the game to sustain your attacking threat. Particularly as I think he wants to protect Núñez as well. I think he seemed in this first season under Klopp a little bit prone to sort of muscular injuries, hasn't he? So I think you just got to be really careful about that. And the way to do it is to bring him off around 60, 70 minutes. And if you've got options to do it, then it makes it a lot easier. You're not weakening your team, and you could see it last night in terms of you could continue to push Everton back because you were swapping quality for quality. So if Liverpool can keep as many attacking options fit between now and the end of the season, that more than anything really should sort of see an upturn in results, because like I say, the goals win games, don't they? And I think even if you're not playing particularly well, you can sort of get away with it if your attack is functioning. And that, for all the issues Liverpool have had, they have been a bit goal shy recently. So hopefully that's, that we'll see an improvement in terms of that going forward, just because of the sheer weight of options they've got up there.
Yeah, so Rich, will finish with you. Promising signs, isn't it, with the number of players coming back? We've also got Virgil Van Dijk coming back, albeit his only action last night was vaulting a few Everton players over during the little Andy Robertson and Chief practice. But it's nice to see him getting back in amongst it, wasn't it? I mean, do you think this really could be a catalyst for Liverpool's season now to kick on, players coming back from injury, turn around the results, or are you fearful of the weekend?
I'm not fearful of the weekend because I think Newcastle have had a little bit of a drop-off as well, to be honest with you. And I'd probably be more fearful if Liverpool had failed to get a positive result against Everton, which on Everton's showing would have been a disaster, to be honest with you. So now I have some renewed optimism going to St James's Park that Liverpool could perhaps get results and then get themselves within 6 points of Newcastle with a game in hand, which could then get them to within 3 points of Newcastle. All ifs and buts, and a lot of that depends on Liverpool actually being capable of putting a run of wins together, which I think the record is 4 for the season, and even that had a little hint of fortune about it in certain games. So it's all to play for all of a sudden, isn't it? It doesn't take a lot, does it, to turn things around? But I think that the very fact that some big players are coming back is crucial. Liverpool definitely need Virgil van Dijk back. There's no doubt about that. The results without him compared to the ones with him kind of speak for themselves. I don't think he's had a brilliant season, but he's still the cornerstone of that defence, and Liverpool look a lot more confident with him in the side. Who he will come in for remains to be seen. I did think Joe Gomez looked good last night. Everything that's already been said there about the way he basically bossed Ellis Sims and whatnot, that's only going to help his confidence, and who knows, he might be the one that stays in. But Van Dijk's going to come straight back into that side, and as good as Cody Gakpo was in the second half yesterday, I'm fully expecting one of Jota or Firmino to come back in at the top end of the pitch as well, probably for him. But yeah, these are players who can win games for Liverpool and save them at the other end. So it is making me a lot more positive about the situation, and the very fact that they played with plenty of fight and desire last night is an encouraging sign, because I was a bit worried where that had all gone, to be honest with you. Some of those away defeats we've seen since the turn of the year had a look of resignation about them, and you can't win anything with that. So St James's Park is the acid test, isn't it? A good team away from home. I guess they'll probably be considered favourites for it. So Liverpool need to go there and remind them that there's still a force to be reckoned with. And if they can get a result there, who knows where it'll go next. Yeah,
absolutely. Hopefully Liverpool can get within 6 points of the top 4 with a game in hand, as you mentioned. And then it really is all to play for in the season. It suddenly doesn't look as terrible as it has been so far. But we've said this before, haven't we, on so many podcasts this season. So let's not get our hopes up too much. We'll, of course, have plenty of preview ahead of the Newcastle match on Friday's Blood Red podcast, so make sure you don't miss that one. But for today, that just about wraps us up there. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching and listening along. As I said, be sure to subscribe to our Blood Red YouTube channel on whichever platform you get your podcasts from, so you don't miss any of our daily podcasts and video content, as well as, of course, keeping across the Echo site for the brilliant articles from the lads. But now, from myself, Patrick Smith, Paul Gorst, David Lynch and Rich Garnett, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time on the Blood Red podcast.